Hello everybody! Bethesda released a video about Starfield and told us about some new features and stuff they wanted to talk about, like the Persuasion system, etc. Now I tend to avoid talking about some of these topics because quite frankly, if they say, "Oh yes, your character wears real shoes," and I'm thinking to myself, "Really? Shoes? Yeah, I'll give that a hard pass." Right, but this is actually an interesting video. It's not a leak, it's actual information straight from Bethesda. So we're going to talk about that now. And whilst we talk about that, bear in mind the biggest feature in this video is the persuasion system. And you're looking at a guy that uses persuasion for a living to calm down people that are extremely angry. So we're going to have some serious topics, serious conversations about that, plus other things. Now we're going to start off with Sundog. One of the comments in the video says how Todd talked about an old game. Now, back in the day, you did have limited memory, and you did have to swap features in and out of memory in order to make a whole game work. Otherwise, you ran out. I mean, for instance, Elite was originally running, in I think it was 64K memory or somewhat very small anyway. So, I mean, you had a whole universe in that 64K memory. So, I think it was. I can't fact it was on the PC first, wasn't it? Yeah, but it was running on a very limited amount of memory anyway. So they managed to load in a universe into that. Years later, you could, with 16 gig or 8 gig of memory, they were running out of memory like crazy. It was crashing out like thing. The difference was procedurally generated worlds allowed these worlds to be created on the fly and then remembered. So when you came up to it, it would load the previous planets stuff with the details listed. The trick is making sure that things were where you remember them to be. Like you landed on a space station, it was in the same spot when you came back. It didn't suddenly change shape and appear somewhere else. But technology advanced, and these procedurally generated worlds are now really good. No Man's Sky proves that it's come a long way since 2016. And what Todd is talking about says the features and the way you run out of memory and things like that. This isn't an issue anymore. And games can use basically these advances that have been developed over the period of 40 years to make some really interesting worlds for us to enjoy. Now, if you look at Skyrim, for example, or any of those Elder Scrolls games, or even Fallout, what they do is they generate the zone you're in and the zone next to it, but the zones outside that's a picture. It's a pre-generated picture, which is why things pop into existence, because as you move into the next zone, that picture's replaced by what's actually there. And if it's not on the picture, it's bing. So yeah, that's the way it works. So you get these pop-in effects, but procedurally generated worlds are generated when you go there. So there's no pre-generated images. It's a different ball game entirely. So I don't know if Bethesda is still using the same system or not, but I would expect that to be a major change. Anyways, he's talking about Traveller, a pen and paper game. I used to write those. I used to literally write those on the PC. I'm not PC on the old Vic 20. It was all go to this, go that, look here, whatever. I mean, I wasn't very good at it because it was just starting out. I was just learning to program. That's one of the ways I learned to program. I never released anything, but they were quite interesting back then because that black screen stared at you. It was like there, and you typed in, you waited to see what the reply would be. And you get like, the dragon attacks you, what are you going to do now? And you think, what? Run south, the dragon's following you. It's like being blind. Going, oh shit, which way I'm going? Hey, it's still there, I can feel it breathing down my neck. But they used to be good fun. But I mean, it's a game from the past. Things have developed quite a lot since then. So, but yeah, I think going back to that, for me and Todd share that history, I think. Right, hard and soft sci-fi. No. There's no hard or soft sci-fi. There is just sci-fi. You might be more close to science, but if you go too close to science, then it's not science fiction, is it? It's science fact, and therefore not science fiction at all. So there's only science fiction, right? How close you want to get to science fact is down to the actual writer. right? So if you want to get really close to it, fine. But if it is all science fact, then it's not science fiction. But anyhow, the science fact thing does add an element of depth to the game. And you do end up with a situation where, you kind of like get a few brownie points from the viewer if it makes sense. Now, I'm a big fan of Japanese sci-fi because they don't care if it makes sense. I'm a huge sci-fi fan, a lifelong sci-fi fan, right? I like every kind of sci-fi, and the Japanese sci-fi is something I especially love because Godzilla can walk through cities. Even though he's a big fat git, he doesn't trash, the buildings either side as he's walking down the street, and you get monsters from space, and nobody cares how realistic it is. I love that, right? However, if you're producing a game based on technology, then staying close to science probably is a good idea. And this is something they mention in a video, right? Being able to trace the history of technological developments. That's depth. That adds an element of depth to a technology-based game that might not even be a consideration. Or one of the problems I had with the science fiction games in the past is they lacked depth. Right, I mean, Obsidian's game, I can't even remember its name because it was a very average effort in my opinion, right? But that lacks depth. It was very superficial. But when you start adding this, it's free. It's free. It's just a free feature of the game. Yeah, this technology was invented in 2056, and it led to a major breakthrough in hyperwave technology, that kind of thing. Right? I mean, in games like Alpha Centauri, it became part of the research tree, and you saw it develop. But this game, Starfield, that's a snapshot. You're in this time zone, and everything that happened before it happened, and what's happening next will be in the next game. It's just a narrow band, but it gives you a free peek at the past, and that is like Elder Scrolls lore, but for Starfield. You see, of course, factions and things like that matters as well. But that's a good feature. It's a good feature. It's a good thing. I mean, it might introduce the word hard science fiction, which I fundamentally object to, right? It says to the game. But like Todd said, in the end, it's a game. It has to be fun. And I'm glad he understands that because you need to understand that difference, between making it super accurate and making it a fun game. But Bethesda have always been good at identifying what is fun and what is accurate. Now, what else have we got? Running out of RAM for 40 years. No, I won't do that joke, Todd. Grav travelled limits. Running out of fuel in space. That did worry me, actually. What happens if you run out of fuel? But they're not doing that. They're doing distance. So I'm guessing this would lead to upgrades to the drive. For instance, if you got a Grav drive and you could travel, say, 10 light years with it, that would limit how far you could go in one jump, right? So they might even charge you, for fuel for that one jump. So every time you jump, you have to have 100 credits in your account, and then you could jump 10, 10 light years. So you'd have to make more money before you could travel all the way across the universe. It costs you quite a bit. And then when you get a better drive, that same amount of money will allow you to travel 100 light years. It'd be that kind of thing I'm expecting. Right? But it does solve the problem, but I'm not directly linking it to fuel. You couldn't even start the jump unless you met the requirements to reach the target. Solves a problem. Makes the gameplay a little bit more simple as well. So yeah, that's a good idea, I think. A very good idea. Now, character traits. Good, bad. That's just an existing thing. That's been around for a long time. That's not a new idea. But what is a good or a bad trait? Think about it, right? A bad trait is something that negatively impacts your character. But what if the game requires that bad trait to unlock certain features? Is it a bad trait anymore? Is, say, being part of these bandits or whatever they call them, scarlet things, this is a bad thing? If that's the gameplay you want, then that bad trait is a good trait, isn't it? Because you get to do things in that group that you couldn't do if you didn't have that trait. So good traits, bad traits really depend on the type of game you want to play. You might not want to remove them, I mean, if I was making a mod I'd be using those bad traits. I'd be looking for them. I did it in the Elder Council mod for Oblivion. I look for these bad traits. My players are going, yes, I'm a lawful good knight, and I just slaughtered those peasants over there for disagreeing with me because I'm a good guy and I've judged them to be bad. And my mod would go, yeah, you're basically an evil sod, aren't you? Okay, we're going to treat you like an evil sod, even though you've got delusions of grandeur about being a lawful good knight. But you can use that system. I have used that system. And you go, right, okay, in order to do this quest, you need to be a right beastad. You know? Says, if you're good, I'm not letting you do it. Because you wouldn't do it. You'd actively go in the other direction. But if you're bad, yeah, you can do that. But if you're good, there's another quest over there you can do that's the opposite of this one. That's what I did in the Elder Council. You won't notice it, but it's there. If you wonder why certain quests don't pop up on repeat playthroughs, it's because of that. It is because of that. It branches off. It's not important quests, but it is quests. So yeah, these good bad traits make a difference. And I would say, right, that the potential there is huge. It really is huge. And if Bethesda use it correctly, and they know how to use this, they've done this before. This isn't new to them, right? They're experts in this. It just depends how much effort they want to put into it, because they've got, a quarter of a million lines, right, in theirs. And if they make all of those, like tested against, traits, then this is going to be one hell of an RPG. Well, it's going to be like the sci-fi version of Morrowind. That's what I think, if they do that. Will they? That's the question. As for 250,000 lines, I produced more characters and lines in my mods than I believe the whole Oblivion game had in the first place. And that's a challenge. 250,000 lines in the game. Can I beat it? Challenge accepted, Bethesda. I'm going to do my best to beat that one. Now, final topic, Persuasion. I do this as a living. I work security in a major hospital. I'm not talking any details other than that, right? And I've got to persuade people that want to stab me in the face to calm down and go back to their wards. And body language. And this one's for you, Bethesda. This is a freebie. It's an easy one to implement. Body language is 75% of it, right? 75% of persuasion is how you stand, how you look, what you're doing. You could start the persuasion system with pick a pose, and your character could make that pose relaxed, angry, aggressive, that kind of thing, right? And modify the persuasion system from that point on. That way, whatever's said isn't going to be the same as it would if you were relaxed or if you were angry. It'd be different each time. You'd get a +5 or a -5 modifier to your persuasion, right, which would influence how it went. Simply oppose. 75%, remember, of the communication you give in these situations is by how you're standing and how you conduct yourself before you even open your mouth. This is a scientific fact. I, for example, at work, I'm walking up to somebody dressed in my Gestapo uniform, that's security uniform, and I give them a wave. Then I go up to the hand like that, say, don't worry, you're not in any trouble. How can I help you? 3 steps to de-escalation. Wave, you're not in any trouble, ask them how they are, how can you help you? That's body language, because I only really get to talk to them in the final stage. I could go up to them, not say a word, and then start talking, and I've already given a bad impression by not putting them at ease. In the game terms, what you'd be doing is you'd be selecting that before the dialogue. Because you wouldn't, well, you could do an animation walking up to people, but it'd get old fast and make the game boring. So you do it right before. It goes, pick a stance. Angry, relaxed, friendly, comforting, whatever, right? Click that, then the persuasion system opens, and the persuasion system then is modified by your choice of stance. Basically, you're taking a gamble, aren't you? You're thinking to yourself, does this guy respond to threats? Maybe cooperation, friendly behaviour, supportive type approach. Which one should I choose for him? And if you get it wrong, the persuasion system's much harder. But that's what I would have done, Todd. That's the way I would have gone. I like the idea, though. I like the idea implemented, but I do think you're only talking 25% out of 100% of an actual persuasion system. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. Hope you enjoyed the video. I did find the Bethesda video quite fascinating, and I have enjoyed it watching it. So anyway, let's just see what he reveals in the next one. See you later.